Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers talk show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case, alien space, it's Gary with the news. Tune in on the radio, don't let Big Brother know. They're listening to everything, even Gary's late night show. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Show Dreamers talk show will fix your despair, because Gary's talking to you at night.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Here now, the news. I'm Guy Ticker, Night Dreams Talk Radio Network news director, anchor reporter, and pet psychologist. Antarctic ice hole the size of Switzerland keeps cracking open. Now scientists finally know why. Researchers first spotted the hole, called the Maud Rise Polignac, in 1974 and 1976 in Antarctica's Weddell Sea. Since then, it's been reappearing fleetingly and sporadically, opening up in different sizes but in the same place, then sometimes not for years. This left scientists puzzled as to the exact conditions needed for the hole to form. In 2016 and 2017, a huge 309,000 square mile hole opened up for several weeks during both winters, enabling scientists to finally solve the 50-year mystery. They reported their findings this past Wednesday, May 1st, in the journal Science Advances. When the summer turns to winter in Antarctica, sea ice expands from its minimum of around 1 million square miles to 7 million square miles, covering 4% of the Earth's surface in irregular porcelain white tiles. Most of this sea ice grows during the weeks-long polar night on the floating ice shelf that wraps around the continent. Holes in this ice, called Polignac's, form when strong winds from inland push the tiles apart. Mystery solved. AI, artificial intelligence, discovers over 27,000 overlooked asteroids in old telescope images. More than 27,000 asteroids in our solar system have been overlooked in existing telescope images. But thanks to a new AI-powered algorithm, we now have a catalog of them. The scientists behind the discovery say the tool makes it easier to find and track millions of asteroids, including potentially dangerous ones that might strike Earth someday. Most of the newfound asteroids hover in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, where scientists have already cataloged over 1.3 million such rocky shards over the past 200 years. The latest bounty, discovered in about 5 weeks, also include about 150 space rocks whose paths glide them within Earth's orbit. To be clear, however, none of these near-Earth asteroids seem to be on a collision path with our planet. Phew. Others are Trojans that follow Jupiter in its orbit around the Sun. Observations of these asteroids are yet to be submitted to and accepted by the International Astronomical Union's Minor Planet Center, the official body responsible for asteroid discoveries. Finally, in the news, why North Korea's latest propaganda bop is a huge TikTok hit. When North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un released his latest song 2 weeks ago, no, I haven't been drinking, surely he couldn't have foreseen it becoming a hit on TikTok. But the propaganda tune has gone viral online, with Gen Z users popping around to the synthy electro-pop. Most are clearly quite oblivious to the Korean lyrics praising a man who's vowed to thoroughly annihilate the U.S. and launch dozens of ballistic missiles. Quote, "Let's sing Kim Jong-un, the great leader. Let's brag about Kim Jong-un, our friendly father," the song goes. It's really just a great tune, TikTokers say. You know what? You decide. Well, that's catchy, kind of like a cold. Taylor Swift was not expecting to get blown out of the water right after dropping her new album. One fan joked online, "Wait, this slaps. This song needs a Grammy. It's so dystopian in the catchiest way." Those are just some of the enthused comments TikTokers made. But the Sunny Pop hides something more sinister, experts say. Could it be it's Kim Jong-un? I'm Guy Ticker. The news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. To submit a story or to get all the latest news, go to nightdreamstalkradio.com, because the truth is out there. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio with Gary Anderson. Real alternative talk radio like you remember from the 80s and 90s, when talk radio was fun, interesting, maybe strange and wacky, but always captivating and always thought-provoking. Stay tuned for a journey into the unknown. Now, here's Gary.
And here it is, Thursday. So fast, JC. You know, we lost a person that is one of the, I would say, the top comedians of this century. Bob Newhart died today at 90.
Yeah, that's too bad. I'll tell you, I remember watching his show, the original one, when I was a kid, way back when. And I thought he was funny as a kid.
Which one was that, Bob Newhart, or the one before or after? He's had a couple of them.
Yeah, the one in the 70s. It was a good one.
Okay, that was Bob Newhart's show. Then after that, after he closed his practice, he had like a little hotel. Remember that? A motel or whatever? Out in the country? Yeah.
Yeah, because he had, there was a brother of two Bobs that were brothers working for him or something.
Which Bob? Yes.
Right.
Well, you know, we talked about snakes a lot, like in Florida, but can you imagine in China, a man is trying to snuggle snakes into the country?
Wait a minute. Did you say snuggle or smuggle?
Snuggle, whatever they are. It's going to be really close to him. You know that.
Yeah, that's why.
Well, this not one snake, not two or a dozen. But he, not even one for his manhood, but he had 100 snakes, or in some cases 101, in his trousers. Could you imagine? You're trying to go into China with 100 snakes. I mean, what? I'm in your pants? Yeah. I mean, the guy's brave.
Yeah, his legs must have looked like they had a life of their own, just moving inside.
Could you imagine when he was on the aircraft coming into China, and somebody sitting next to him and looking at his trousers move?
Right. Yeah.
Could you, people sitting back? Oh my God, this guy has 100 penises. They're all moving.
Yeah, they got their own zip code or something, right? That's so weird. The guy must have been, I don't know what his motive was, but
he's going to get free vacation for many, many years.
Yeah,
you know, in China they don't play games; they just lock you up and forget about you.
No, they don't play games, and I think it's going to be bad news for the snakes too.
Well, yeah, I'll put it this way. You might not have any head for a long time. They're going to chop it off.
Yeah, all at once.
Boom. Yeah. U.S. scientists now confirm they found a cave that is really deep in the moon, and it would make a great moon base. And it could protect the astronauts or whoever is on the base against the cold and getting slammed with, meteorites and asteroids and stuff like that.
I have seen that. That was pretty fascinating, actually, because that was one of the theses or theories, too, is we go up there and we can live under the, in caves or what they call volcano tubes or whatever.
Probably lava tubes or something, yeah.
Lava tubes, yeah. It also kind of brings the question, because a lot of people we've had on say, oh, there's aliens on the moon. I wonder if that could be linked to them, too.
I don't know. Do you really think there's aliens on the moon?
I don't personally, no. I don't.
Do you really think we went to the moon?
You're trying to get me in
trouble. You
trouble.
talk about news cover-up and twisting around. Again, we've had some very famous people on the show through the years, and the people who are scientists all come back to the same thing. We could have never gone to the moon with the technology. I don't know.
I don't either, but I tell you, I will say this, if there is one cave there, there's got to be more, and that's what that's what these scientists have been saying. We can get to the moon. We can live underneath the surface. We can do some things, and I don't know. We'll see. Here's the funny part: if we went there in '69, Gary, why haven't we been back?
Why did we destroy all the Saturn V, rockets too? For we couldn't go back. Think about that. Some of them were brand new. They didn't, they were built and ready to go, and we destroyed them all or put them in museums. I don't know. I will say this, and then we're going to bring on our guest, Mel's Hole. Okay, scientists can even come out and have said, I even posted it on our Facebook group page a few days ago. As I tried telling people for years, Mel's Hole in Ellsberg never existed. It was nothing more than a hoax that my friend Art Bell started with one of his ham buddies.
Yeah,
it was not real. And people get mad at me. They kept saying, and I got so many emails from people, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. It's real. It is not real. And you know what we got coming up here in August the 9th? We're going to have some of Art's best friends that used to come on his show on a regular time, like Whitney Strieber, Major Ed Dames, and on and on and on. And we're going to talk about a lot of things about, Art Bell. We're going to remember, that's what the show is, remembering Art Bell.
Yeah, that's going to be a really good show. And I was just going to say too, if you want to get an argument going online or anywhere, just say what you just said. That Mel's Hole.
It doesn't exist. And I knew all about it because me and Art were friends. And then, I mentioned about, I got him going about that last one. It was created about the Hopi Indians, the Hopi elders in Nevada with the big cave there where they put the goat down. And when the goats quit screaming, they brought it up and a great big penguin came out of it.
Yeah.
And I'm the one that told Art, well, let's make it really crazy. And he did. And people bought it. So I don't know. I'm going to get more hate mail for this tonight. Let's find out about our guest tonight because we got a really interesting show that might shock a lot of people. So let's find out about our guest.
In a career marked by high-profile stories under the press of Deadline, Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Dan Luzadder spent more than 40 years on the front lines of American journalism for newspapers and magazines. Now an author and documentary filmmaker, he continues to explore the role of journalism in our American democracy. Nationally recognized for work investigating matters of public importance, his stories have probed and exposed human rights abuses in state and federal prisons, drug trafficking, organized crime, and police and political corruption. His long history in journalism, which began as a teenage reporter on a small, gritty Midwestern newspaper covering the night cops beat, has evolved into reporting that's carried him around the world. Luzadder's work as a freelance journalist has appeared in the New York Times and New York Daily News, in national magazines, and in major papers throughout the country. His work has been honored nationally by the American Bar Association for exposing corruption in the federal courts, and by numerous state and regional awards for writing and reporting. In addition to a 1983 Pulitzer for general local reporting, he's been twice nominated for investigative work, including his inquiries into the police handling of the Columbine High School massacre. He was named a member of the Scripps Howard Journalism Hall of Fame in 1993. His book, The Manchurian Journalist, was just released this past June. It's a collection of his newspaper columns and is also scheduled for publication this year. He is currently at work on a film that merges investigative journalism with documentary filmmaking in an investigation revisiting a 40-year-old cold case involving 5 unsolved homicides and a series of bombings in Speedway, Indiana.
Well, Dan, I want to welcome you to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good, Gary. Thank you very much. That was quite an intro.
Well, thank you. Well, it was a lot to put in a short space. You know that.
Well, I'll never be able to get all that on my tombstone, I'm sure.
Well, you can try. Anyway, and actually, now in the future, it's going to be actually digital. That's starting to happen now on someone. You go up there and it automatically, somebody's looking at the tombstone and it starts talking about the person, and the person's actually even talking to you with their own words.
Yeah, I saw something on 60 Minutes, I think, about these digital memories of veterans that served in World War II and remembering them. It's an interesting idea.
I got to ask you, what is going on with the news media? I noticed, when I was young, I really thought we were being told the truth. I'm going back in the 70s and 80s, well, so in reasonable amount of truth. But it seems like in the last 10, 15 years, I mean, if you go on to any network, they're biased. And some of the stuff they talk about, it can't be real. What's going on?
Well, the news media has changed. Gary, you and I have both been in maybe you have been in the news media exactly, but in broadcasting, you've watched a lot of changes, as I have. As noted, I started in journalism on a small newspaper, working as a police reporter when I was still a teenager, and in those days, most people read the newspaper in local communities, and most newspapers were locally owned. And then the business began to change. There was a lot of profit in newspapers in the day, and corporations took over, changed some of the ways that people did things. But I think the biggest change is we've lost sight of what journalism was supposed to be all about, which was reporting on communities and reporting on the nation and reporting on the world in an accurate way. Everybody's got an opinion now, and their opinion has to line up with what they're reporting, I guess.
I don't know. It really changed. You go back to Walter Cronkite or all those famous people in that time. You sit there, and I think you were getting a lot of factual stuff. Now you go onto any network and you're listening to the evening news. To me, it seems like there's a lot of propaganda going on all through the news media. And the anchors were not biased. They could be biased off the air, but when they did the news, I don't think they were like they are today. Now they put their own opinion, they put their own twist in it, and that is not journalism.
No, it's not journalism. Not the kind of journalism I grew up with. Not the kind of journalism where we thought that by putting together the daily record of events of a community, we were establishing something in a bit of history, something about the character of the community, telling about our own daily lives. We've lost a lot of that as newspapers have disappeared. We're no longer papers of record in local communities keeping track of who's doing what. We are also losing the techniques of journalism that produced such good reporting when good reporting was done.
Well, good reporting is the reporter would go out and investigate, regardless. Now, how investigation? Because I know some people in the news media, and their idea is investigating. They go on Google. Now, when you get the news and you're investigating on Google, how much more disinformation are you getting in there yet?
Well, exactly. And, it's not just with the advent of things like the internet and the social media, but there have always been problems within journalism. It goes back a very long way. But I think in the past, there was more effort to be correct in factual reporting and to correct things when they were not factual. Now things pass over our heads, broadcast to us, and we don't get a chance to stop and think, is this right or not? If I made an error in a story working for a newspaper and the sources on the story noticed the error, somebody would call the editor at the paper and say, "Hey, this idiot got this all wrong," and they'd correct it the next day. But there's not much of that going on now.
And that's scary. And if you go back, 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the news, okay, look at when JFK got assassinated. Things didn't come out about Marilyn Monroe and his love affair to years afterwards because, the news media, the networks and all that took certain things as sacred. Like the president of the United States, you didn't want to slam him. Nowadays, I'll tell you, you go on, and depending on the network, I mean, it's bad. I mean, it's no, how's the word for it? No respect anymore. That's what has been lost.
I think it has. Respect has been lost, and so has the tried and true methods of reporting that actually took reporters to sources that could adequately tell them things they needed to know. The idea that you line up ideologically with the media outlet that you're representing, whether it's on the left or on the right, just strikes me as part of the problem and polarization of our political landscape. It has to be either or. That's fine if you're playing a football game, but there are more important things going on here.
Well, not just that. Even a major newspaper, which is very few of them now, and most of them are online, they're cutting even staff back now because people are not wanting to really get the really truthful news. And that is also affecting journalism, isn't it? When you start losing all the news medias and all that. I remember the small mom and pop newspapers when I was a teenager. Your local community, your little area had a newspaper. I mean, when I grew up in Seattle, there was a place called White Center. They had the White Center News. They had the West Seattle Herald. They had the Seattle Times. They had the PI. And then at one point, all the small ones were all gone. And then you had the Seattle Times and PI, and then they merged. And then, all hell went through. And then, society has really changed because I don't know, it's scary.
It is scary. What I notice is the loss of the papers of record that kept track of a local community. I said this before that in the days when newspapers were doing well, they published things like marriages and divorces that were filed in the community. They published agate-type court cases that were filed in bankruptcies. They reported on small things and large things, and they kept a record. That record became, at least in my experience as an investigative reporter, it became vital in trying to keep in context things that I was reporting about. And we're losing that, and we have mostly lost it, I think. We've also lost the institutional knowledge that came with reporters that were grizzled old veterans that knew how to build sources, knew how to respond to deadline, knew how to find things out at the last minute. I learned from those people on the ground in newsrooms in various places, and but yet was not able to pass on much of what I learned to reporters because of downsizing, of the veterans being moved off into retirement or into other jobs, and younger reporters who didn't benefit from that mentoring coming behind them.
Well, you think like if today's society, like Watergate with Nixon, resigning, and the impeachment or to have him impeached, I should say, all going on. If it wasn't for reporters, none of that would have happened. And today's, who knows what would have happened? That's how we've changed so much. I mean, reporters would spend, and the news agencies, the newspapers would spend a lot of money to have the reporters really dig into the case. Look how hard they dug into Watergate. And look what they found. Do you think they do that nowadays? I don't think they do.
No, there isn't much investigative reporting going on. I kind of addressed that in my book when I had an opportunity after freelancing for quite a while doing various things. And at the time, I was doing reporting on municipal bonds and the municipal bond market for a financial wire service out of London. But having the opportunity to do investigative reporting was what led me to doing this book on journalism, and that it made me recognize even more clearly how little investigative work there really is. You hear reporters say or described as an investigative reporter, and what they know how to do is pick up the phone and call people. That's investigative reporting, but that's not the investigative reporting I learned.
Well, but that's scary too, because I know somebody who's in Ukraine right now as a freelance reporter. And when I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, he said he's having a hard time financially because, they want what they want him basically to do is make up stories. And he was told that what he was reporting wasn't good enough. Go and enhance it, as they said.
Enhance it.
Enhance it. Well, what's that mean in your business?
I think enhance it means sensationalize. That's part of the problem. We have historically developed, along with the good journalism that's done, this appetite for the sensational. I mean, when I was in newspapers and I worked on wire desks and copy desks on a few occasions, we had something called second coming type that we only used across the top of page one for some really major events. But we had plenty of pretty large headlines for stories that shocked or brought attention. That was part of the ethic of getting the reader to pay attention to the newspaper, was stories that shocked or surprised or whatever. But that sensationalism has gone a different direction. It's not sensational enough unless you add to the facts, or you add some supposition, or you enhance, as you say.
Well, my friend said what he said is make up. They wanted him to fabricate, and build it up.
Yeah. And I hope he resisted with all his ability. But, when you are a freelancer out there, you're dependent on that check. A lot of people who are doing freelance journalism these days still have to feed a family. And that was my experience as well. I covered the Kobe Bryant rape allegations in Colorado for the New York Daily News. And the deal was, for a freelancer, if you got a byline in the Daily News, you got paid. If you didn't get a byline, you didn't get paid. So you invested your day's work, and you better be reporting hard enough and well enough to get that byline so you got paid for the day's work.
Yeah, just like being in broadcasting. We need to take a little quick break. We'll be back with Dan. We're going to find out also the CIA connection to journalism too. So we'll be back with Dan, and we got so much more to say. Are you going to trust your news anymore after we get done? We'll find that out. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio.
Take a journey of adventure and discovery for the enigmatic giants of the forests. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. The author himself describes it this way. Having found possible Sasquatch evidence, namely trees driven into the ground upside down, thought to be territory markers, led me to investigate this creature in my native Ohio. Several years and many forays into Bigfoot territory, I have found incredible evidence, which inspired my book, on the trail of Bigfoot. Bigfoot is alive and has many fantastic abilities. The evidence is out there for all to see, but you need to know what to look for. My book will inspire those who have answered the call to seek this elusive creature, the Bigfoot. The truth is out there. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. Available now at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and IndieBound.org. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
You know, Dan, I really miss my local newspapers. In fact, I really miss newspapers.
I miss them too. And there's something about being able to hold that in your hand and carry it out to the front porch with your coffee in the morning and take a look at the compendium of news and see what's really going on. Not just the big stories, but the local stories.
Oh, yeah. Society has changed so much. And I have to be honest with you. I remember when the internet came out, I told people that it was going to change the industry, not just the news industry. It was going to change society. I even told my boss at the time, eventually AM and FM radio will start dying because of the internet. And that's how much it has to actually destroy years, centuries of work in just a short period of time. Now, like I said, you don't even have to go out and investigate something somewhere. You can sit at your news desk and then, hey, find out about this and do. I mean, it's changed. And that's what's scary. But how is the CIA involved in journalism?
Well, the most interesting part of doing this book came when I decided to try to track down and understand how the CIA had influenced the American media landscape, and the exploration of all that took me to places that I didn't expect to go. Now, this was all tied to my investigation into the work of Lawrence Wright, who's a writer for The New Yorker. He's written for Rolling Stone magazine, Texas Monthly. He's written many books. He won the Pulitzer Prize in 2007 for his book on Al-Qaeda and the War on Terror. But as I began to look into Lawrence Wright's background, I discovered that he had an untold story, which was that he had participated in a couple of programs that were closely aligned with the State Department and the Central Intelligence Agency that were used to basically recruit people into the media. And in the course of that, I began to look back at what the CIA's involvement was. There was, you mentioned earlier, Watergate, Gary, the story that was done in Rolling Stone magazine in the late 1970s by Carl Bernstein, part of the Watergate Washington Post team, about Operation Mockingbird by the CIA, in which it was fairly well reported that some 400 journalists in the country had been either wittingly or unwittingly involved with intelligence activities through the course of their work. And there was a lot of controversy in the 70s. There were congressional inquiries, Frank Church Committee, into the use of journalists and priests and academians to do spy work for the Central Intelligence Agency. And it caused a lot of controversy. But what I began to see behind the scenes was it wasn't just the CIA that was involved in these things. There was a network of intelligence that involved an elite community within the country, very powerful individuals who were extremely influential. And they were interested in promoting the Western cultural values and anti-communism in the wake of World War II. So we think of Alan Dulles and people like Frank Wisner who talked about the mighty Wurlitzer, the ability of the CIA to play the media like a pipe organ. But it tracks back to others besides those CIA principles we recognize. It tracks back to a guy named John McCloy, who was, when he passed away, the New York Times characterized him as the chairman of the establishment. He was the governor for the occupation of Germany, and he was very influential in the creation of the Central Intelligence Agency and its so-called black bag operations. And these kinds of networks involved foundations that served as front companies to funnel money into CIA-related, intelligence-related programs, like the Cultural Cold War. And one of those foundations came out of Dallas, Texas, the Hoblitzell Foundation, and was involved another individual named Robert Story, who was the head of the American Bar Association. He was head of the International Bar Association. He was chief executive trial prosecutor in the Nuremberg war trials. But he was also the owner of a very small storefront bank in Dallas. And the writer Lawrence Wright's father became president of that bank. And after considerable investigation over several years, I realized that this little bank had way too many loan officers, and they all had ex-military background, and they ostensibly didn't have enough work to do at the bank. So it had the characteristics of what is known as non-official cover for people operating under the umbrella of the CIA. So these kinds of things.
But wait a minute. I got a question, Dan. The CIA doesn't supposed to be doing anything in our country. It's supposed to be out of our country.
Well, Gary, that's an excellent point, and you honed in on it immediately. The idea of the CIA was to gather intelligence that was useful to the country in protecting itself outside the U.S. borders. The domestic work is supposed to be left to the FBI. But I can tell you, because I've actually known an individual who was undercover for the agency, working out of a small accounting firm with all the earmarks of an accountant, but did no accounting. These things, and he was a source, but these kinds of things exist, and that's a serious issue because if the agency, the intelligence community, is operating illegally within the U.S., the American people ought to know about it. The thing that struck me so profoundly was that Lawrence Wright, as a famed author and writer who's had an extraordinary career, never mentioned a word about Robert Story, who was head of the board of foreign scholarships, where the Fulbrights were used to bring people who had political influence into this country, to bring them into our educational institutions and to develop friendships that were valuable to the intelligence community.
That's scary when you really think about it. And but how did it affect journalism itself, though? Have they got involved into everyday journalism? Okay, Dan, maybe we touched on something we shouldn't have. You're breaking up all of a sudden. Your voice is... I lost you. I can't hear you. JC, that's strange. We just took...
Yeah. It's like in and out.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, I think it was the earpods I was using.
I thought maybe the CIA was listening and jamming you.
You know, I think they've got better, bigger things to do. At least they ought to be doing than worrying about a reporter from a small town newspaper who's bothersome to them.
But look at this. Well, a lot of people don't realize there's a huge building. And in this building, they have where they monitor people's emails, phone calls, cell phone calls, all this stuff. And that is really scary too.
Yeah. Have
you ever done any investigation on that?
I've been on the periphery of some of the investigation into surveillance activities. I would note that one of the individuals that crops up in my book was given the highest award, civilian award by the CIA for developing systems that helped surveil traffic in the war on terror and in other confrontations with outlying actors. I think that system raises tremendous questions and threatens the independence of individuals in our democracy. Worrisome, but I don't think we can spend a lot of time thinking about it. We have to go on with our lives and do what we do. I look at what police do now with surveillance cameras around on every street. If safety becomes more important than the freedoms that we think we enjoy, then I think we're in a difficult situation.
I think we are. China, I've mentioned this before, they got, in the main cities of China, they got cameras everywhere. And, they can recognize somebody not just by their face, but even the way they walk. That's how much AI is advanced. And we're slowly, that's scary when you really think about it. But, years ago, if this would have happened 20, 30 years ago, the news media, the news reporters, they would have been writing stories about this, how we're losing it. But, we don't talk about that. We talk about COVID. We talk about Ukraine. We talk about, all kinds of things. But we don't talk about other type of things that, would have been brought up years ago if it was got known. I don't know that's how much news reporting has really changed. Journalism has really changed.
It has. It's changed in fundamental ways. And I'm as I've thought about these issues, I realize when we talk about democracy and journalism, they're both dependent on each other. The fourth estate is a very important part of maintaining this democracy. The people need to know what's going on, and they need to be able to have factual information they can depend on. We're divided so much, I think, because we have misinformation and disinformation and people that know how to manipulate the news and know how to create impressions. Those things are dangerous. We've seen in history how they have worked to create situations in which we see genocide. And that's more than worrisome. It's something that we need to seriously consider how to correct.
I don't know. Has it gone too far to go and correct what's going on?
I think I'm at base an optimist. I've spent my life watching people's lives and things unfold around me, investigating issues of human rights and corruption. But I've never lost the idea that there are tons of good people out there interested in doing the right thing. I think it all starts with the rule of law. We have to have a certain respect for the rule of law. Otherwise, we don't respect anything else. And we have to have freedom from corruption within the rule of law in order to depend on it for it to be credible. These are fundamental things. These are pillars of the society that we think we live in.
Well, like I said earlier, if you flip on CNN or Fox or any of them, I actually go to BBC a lot for news because I feel it's a lot more accurate. But if you go onto it nowadays, like I said, the anchors, they're biased and what their beliefs are. So when they talk about the news, it's really scary. So if you listen to one network, you listen to the other network, you listen to commercial, like TV's, networks, the news, which they, really cut their news department, everything. The news reporter, being a reporter, isn't it hard to even get a job in it nowadays?
Well, it's tremendously hard to get a job. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. When I moved out to the West Coast, I visited a local newspaper here, and I told them, I'm down the coast a little bit. If you ever need any correspondent work, let me know. And the editor surprised me. He said, I don't think we'll be doing that. I said, oh, he said, I said, I'm not expensive. He said, it's not that. He said, we have our own reporters and we do things our own way. So, I wasn't looking for a job, but I wondered about taking advantage of opportunities. I could mentor his young reporters, and I offered to. And I certainly have the experience, I think, to be qualified for that. But I think there is sort of a closed attitude now. And even beyond the lack of jobs, I think that the opportunities to find newspapers where there's training or television stations or radio stations where there's reporting opportunities that are vigorous and well supported, those are so rare.
Well, I know people, like I said, because I'm in broadcasting, I know news reporters that, even some of them, our local stations up in the Seattle area, they are so disgusted with their news departments of, the stations that, I know somebody just recently quit. They just couldn't take it after many years working with them because the reporting has really changed.
It has. And I don't, without the existence of newspaper beats, which were generators of news, and without the structure of newspapers that fed Associated Press and United Press International, the wire services that helped tie the country together and certainly tied communities together within the state, everybody was sharing and producing stories, and those were that produced a network of news. You don't see that feed system anymore. When I was on small daily newspapers, and I had a story that was worthy of UPI, it was sent out to UPI. I'd get a check in the mail a couple of weeks later for $3, and that $3 meant a lot to me back then.
Yeah, but let's be honest with you. $3 is not $3 of today's $3. You could actually eat for $3 back then for a day.
You could get a sandwich, a beer, and a plate of French fries for $3 in that era. Yeah. Now it costs you $20.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think the future of journalism is going to be? Is it going to be? I hate to say it. What's your feeling about AI?
Well, I don't think I know enough about it to know any more than it brings grave risks to us. When computers are writing the news for us, I think we will have lost the human element that contains compassion and empathy and all of the other elements that produce interesting creative work. I don't know what to think about it, but I definitely don't like the idea that we will replace reporters with machines that are able to produce stories that are somewhat accurate, maybe.
That's happening right now, by the way.
No.
Because I do, like I said, I know people in the industry, and they just go to certain programs, and it basically they give it a little bit of information, do the research on this, and this, and it writes up the whole complete script for the news. Yeah. That's scary. Where it's no compassion, no research done that the reporter has put into it. Here it is. It's all done by the computer.
When I was doing columns, I did that for 7 years in Indiana, and I was writing about things on the street. I was looking for common stories and common people, and it was a fairly successful effort. I got to meet a lot of interesting individuals. I don't think there's any way that AI can put on a pair of shoes and walk down the street and examine what's going on in a neighborhood and get a feel for it and write about it. It's merely a compendium. What AI can do is a compendium of ideas that other people have inputted, some of them accurate and some of them not, or maybe most of them not. So I don't know. We need writers. We need people to see and be able to write about what they see and what they think. we need to share ideas, and that's as old as we are. That's as old as mankind is. The ability to share stories. I don't want to see us hand that over to a cold, compassionless set of algorithms.
But that's what's happening. That's what's happening with a newspaper up here, that they laid off half their staff, and they also had a internet presence with their newspaper, but they eliminated almost all the people on that. And again, it was the few people that are now reporting the news. I mean, we're not getting the quality news that we used to get. That's the other problem. You mentioned you get the newspaper in your cup of coffee. There was news articles in there you could really get into. We don't have that no more.
No, we don't. One of my criticisms about local newspapers was they started charging people to publish obituaries. Well, obituaries were things that helped sew communities together.
Yeah.
They told you about who was passing and what their lives were like, and those things were important. Every reporter on the newspapers in the old days would draw a call every now and then, no matter what they were doing, to take an obit, and the writers who cared about what they were doing would put a little polish into that obituary, and they would write a clear story and something that people remembered. We've certainly lost that, because I'm sure that AI is writing the obituaries.
Oh yeah. Now, you wrote this book. What made you decide to write this book?
Well, the Manchurian Journalist came out of my freelance work, in which I encountered a magazine called Freedom that was being published down in Florida. And a reporter with the Denver Post that I ran into, who was facing layoff and was trying to mine some freelance opportunities, heard that they were looking for an investigative reporter who had considerable experience, because they were relaunching their magazine. The magazine turned out to be owned by the Church of Scientology. And what they wanted, after they talked to me for a while, they wanted to ask me if I would take a look at the coverage of the Church of Scientology. And of course, they've been high profile on the celebrity circuit and whatever. But the subject of the book, Lawrence Wright, one of the subjects of the book, the main subject of journalism, that is sort of an illustration, but he wrote a book about the Church of Scientology. And in the book, there were considerable numbers of errors and things that were stories that had been repeated about the church that had been debunked, and those sorts of things. So in looking at the fairness of some of that, I started to look at Lawrence Wright and his reasons for writing what he wrote. And that's what took me into his association with this network of intelligence that produced a recruitment network for journalists into American journalism. And from there, most of the time was spent in trying to piece together how this network worked and where he fit into it, and what the impact was on the reporting, both on matters pertaining to internal matters and more importantly, on the war on terror.
How long did it take you, Dan, to write this book?
About 5 years. I was also doing other things at the same time. I was researching this, and one of those was the project that's ongoing for quite some time on this documentary film on a series of cold case crimes in Speedway, Indiana. But 5 years of pretty solid work, I think, is about what went into it. There was a lot of travel involved, and I spent time going to archives at the Harvard Library and Amherst and libraries in Dallas, etc., looking for records and documents. Spent a lot of time doing FOIA requests from the FBI and the CIA, and examining history and under the microscope of what I was learning about this infiltration of the news media by special interests who had an agenda.
Have you been hassled by any of those organizations?
No, I think I've been flying pretty much under the radar. I have acknowledged that in the past, some of the stories that I have done have been fairly high profile, and they've created some negative response. I was doing an investigation into a trade school that was accessing guaranteed student loans, and those a good part of the excess was winding up in the hands of politicians through political contributions, same politicians who were overseeing the federal guaranteed student loan programs. And so during the course of that, I investigated some corruption in the judicial system in Indiana. And I was working on another story, and I ran into a source who happened to be a private investigator. And I had picked him up in my car, and we were having a conversation in the car. And he said, "By the way, I know where you live." And I lived on a little farmhouse outside of Indianapolis. And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "How would you happen to know where I live?" And he said, "Because I spent a good number of hours laying on the railroad track just north of your house, watching your house to see who was coming and going."
That would make me feel really good.
Well, at the same time, there were people that dropped by and picked up my garbage, and they weren't the normal garbage men either. But
yeah.
So, I mean, you learn to be aware that people are going to pay attention to you if you're going to raise issues that in this case were potentially criminal. And I've done a lot of wild things in journalism. I negotiated for hostages on death row one night. I was held hostage once for an hour by a source who was a fugitive from the law, who thought I had called the police on him.
Because our time is almost up. I guarantee if somebody would have done that, I would have had to change my trousers. Where can they find your book at, Dan?
You can find it on Amazon. The publisher is Trine Day. You can get it from Trine Day's website. It's Barnes & Noble. And The Manchurian Journalist, Lawrence Wright, the CIA, and the Corruption of American Journalism.
Now, do you have a website to share?
I don't have a website.
You don't have a website? In today of AI?
I know. But the only time I tried to get on social media, I opened a Twitter account. And the next day I got a lot of negative negative information. I decided I didn't need the headache. So I've kind of stayed away from social media as much as possible.
Yeah, sometimes I wish that myself. Dan, again, I want to thank you so much for coming on. You opened a lot of people's eyes about journalism. And again, like I said, I think the future of journalism, we got like 1 minute. What can you sum up about the future of journalism?
I think we need to pay attention to the importance of journalism and the role it should play. And we need to find a mechanism that goes beyond the financial structures of the past in order to support that kind of journalism. We need independent journalists. We need them to do their work and to let us all know what we can depend on credibly and accurately so that we can make decisions about things that are important to us.
But do you think we've gone past that point now with society?
I don't. I think we can find our way back to that if we take it seriously and find other mechanisms to use.
I think people just need to stand up to their local news medias and national news medias and say, look, we want the truth. We want news reporting. Something like, you used to do where you'd get out with your shoes and be walking up and down the street, investigating, which is not done much anymore. Well, Dan, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And again, share the name one more time for the book.
It's The Manchurian Journalist, Lawrence Wright, the CIA, and the Corruption of American Journalism.
Yeah. Boy, you might have problems by tomorrow. But anyway, Dan, you take care, will you?
All right. Thank you, Gary. It was fun to be on your show.
It was really fun. I really enjoyed having you on.
Thank you.
Well, JC, who's our guest tomorrow? What are we going to be talking about?
Well, I'm going to tell you, we have two fantastic guests. Starting off the lineup is Forrest Crawford, and he spent many years interviewing a officer who was part of a military UFO crash retrieval team.
You mean where they actually picked up UFOs and transported them somewhere?
Yes. Yeah.
How about the ETs that were probably in the craft?
Yeah, and this was like years ago, so it kind of coincides with what stuff's coming out today about what Gresham and some of these other people are saying.
Very interesting. And then who is our second guest?
Marcus Allen, the UK editor of Nexus Magazine, who's also a lifelong researcher into a lot of mysterious things and current things as well, including UFO disclosure and what's going on with that today.
Yeah, the people just like mad emailed me saying, get him back on, get him back on. So we managed to, it was his busy schedule to get him back on. He was just on last week. A lot of people might not remember, but we were talking about maybe we never went to the moon. Maybe we did. I don't know, but I can certainly say if you watch the Honeymooners with Jackie Gleason, just pow, right in the old Kiss Her to the Moon. I mean, he was sending people to the moon then.
He sent them right and left. I wonder if Alice ever made it there.
I don't know about that. I don't think he would ever punch Alice to the moon.
No. He would have punched his neighbor. Ralph? Was it Ralph?
Yeah, Ralph. He worked, repairing sewers for the city.
Oh, I thought. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you remember he was always down the manhole repairing the sewer.
Yeah, and Jackie was the bus driver.
He was the bus driver, yes.
Got it.
They had to make a special door wide enough for him to get in.
Yeah. I knew a guy who used to look just like him.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody, I want to thank you for listening and watching us and making us grow so fast on YouTube. Give a thumbs up, hit that bell, because people are emailing me and messaging me on Facebook and on X saying, why not being notified? Well, if you don't hit that bell, if you only subscribe, you'll never know when we're on. You got to ring my bell, or in the case, that bell on YouTube. And can you imagine tonight, I'm going to have a dream of snakes coming out of my trousers.
Right.
And 100. Can you believe that? 100 snakes? How would it be somebody so brave? Of course, he probably have them in plastic bags or whatever, but 100 snakes.
That'd be like a million fingers all up and down your legs or something. I mean, how do you get them in your pants?
I don't know. But he was caught.
Yeah, of course he was caught. Probably seeing his pants were moving.
Yeah, but in China they don't play games.
No,
you go to prison for a long time, slave labor, or they just take you out and shoot you.
Yeah, listen, I know they didn't take that very lightly. I'm sure, definitely not.
Yeah, but who would be dumb enough to try to bring into China 100 snakes? I mean, come on, rare snakes, by the way.
Yeah, and listen, obviously they probably weren't poisonous. A lot of them were probably them constrictors, the kind that squeeze and wrap.
I don't know. How do we, now you're just assuming.
I'm guessing, yeah.
Maybe they could have all been poisonous.
Well, they could have been.
Maybe they were the type of just look at you and smile and give you orbs.
It could be warm and fuzzy ones, yeah.
Yeah, now see, you would not make a good reporter. There you just assumed and put your own twist to it.
I put the own twist on it.
You put your own twist on it. Well, again, to Tom and to Barb out there and to Rory and to Ron and December and all the other people that are not on chat but watch us. I wish you would come on chat. It'd be really more fun if you did. Just don't be so, where you have to hide out there like the CIA. Anyway, everybody have a good one. We will catch you tomorrow night. Don't forget August 9th, Whitney Strieber, Major Ed Dames, who else? Stan Gordon, and who else?
I believe James Goodall's one of them.
And maybe Andrew, too.
Gonna be a bunch of people.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Art Bell and some of the things. Now I'm going to say goodbye because as soon as I get off here, I'm going to check my emails. There'll probably be 1,000. Melto does exist. You don't know what you're talking about. Everybody have a good one. We'll catch you tomorrow.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers, talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not inside. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there.
Did you know? Night Dreams Talk Radio is also live on YouTube. No! Yeah, well, yes, we are. Watch Gary and his guests. Join in on the chat. Ask questions of Gary and his guests. And maybe even make some new friends. Just go to YouTube and type in Night Dreams Talk Radio. Yeah, just like that. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell. Some bell. So you'll be notified